This week's video comes right out of the mailbag. I'm going to answer a viewer question about surveillance and child safety seats. Hi, this is Larry Kaye with ShadowAnyone.com and the creator of the Investigator's Ultimate Guide series, which is premium private investigator training from someone who's been there and done that. This week's question comes from an investigator who does surveillance. He has a child, so there's a child safety seat in his car, and he was wondering, is it good to leave that in there? Because people would not think you're an investigator with a child safety seat in the back of your car. Or should you take it out because people will see you have a child, and that kind of exposes a little bit of a weak spot in your life. Maybe if you get a crazy or disgruntled person, they might decide to pursue you through your family. If you followed me for any length of time for years now, I have said I'm a big proponent. I'm very much in favor of using props when you do surveillance, props that enforce the pretext that you're using. Now, if you're doing surveillance and just in the back of a van and you basically park your van in the proper spot, be sure you park in the proper spot to do surveillance, and you're just going to be in the back of the van, then maybe you don't need any pretext things up front. But if you're posing as maybe it's a construction van or something, why not have a hard hat on the front seat just to kind of sell it a little bit more? If you're posing as something where you're sitting in the front seat of a car, and I've talked about different pretexts you can use before, have the appropriate things around you that if someone comes up to you and you say, hey, I'm doing XYZ, and they look at the, I'll say litter for lack of a better word, but the things in your car, they say, well, yeah, that makes sense. You've got exactly the things I would expect that person to have. So in that context, I think a child safety seat is kind of a neat thing, because if you're doing surveillance and there's a seat there, it can very much throw people off or persuade them or convince them that you're just sitting there because your car broke down and you're waiting for a ride, for example. If that's your pretext, and that doesn't work for all circumstances, believe me, know this stuff cold. I'm not teaching pretext here. But if that's your pretext, then yeah, here's a guy, it's got a child safety seat in the back, maybe an empty bag of some fast food kids meal thing on the floor in the back. That kind of all fits and makes you a little more relatable to a lot of people. It might help sell that pretext. If you don't have any children in your life, then a car seat back there might be the perfect pretext in certain circumstances, or a perfect prop, because there is no downside. They'll never be able to get to your kid if you ain't got a kid. So looking at the downside, the idea that if people see this child safety seat, they know a little bit more about your personal life, and that's not good for you. Here's what I would say there. One, on surveillance, the person you're watching should never know that you're there. If you're far enough away, if you're at the appropriate distance from where you should be, yeah, maybe another neighbor might come out or say something and see you. But that's probably not going to be the person who loses their mind or gets angry at you. I will give a little shout out to Andrew over at piadvice.net. He has an excellent video about, I forget exactly what it's called. I think it's something like Neighbors, and it's a telephone app that allows all neighbors in the local area to kind of be in touch with each other. He has an excellent video on why nowadays, even if you're far away, that information can kind of leak out to the person you're watching. So check out his videos at piadvice.net. But in the context we're talking about here, the subject of your investigation should never know you're there. And what that means is having a child safety seat in your car shouldn't give them one clue one way or the other into your personal life, because they're never going to see it. The final thing I'll say is, it's really very unlikely that you're going to run into a problem where somebody tries to hunt you down or get even with you. Does it happen? I'm going to tell you, it could happen. I've had a few times in my life, not even as a PI, but like loss prevention. Somebody tried to follow me. A couple of times that's happened. But, this idea of someone tracking you down and getting even, keep it in mind. It could happen, but it's going to be really statistically unlikely that it happens. And you should find some comfort in that. I'll put a link in the description. I have another video that talks about using a layered approach to privacy and security. I believe I have a podcast that covers that as well. Yes, I do. I have a podcast over at ShadowAnyone.com/podcast. Might be episode number 4, talks about layered security approaches. You can check the titles over there. But that will, so don't drop your guard, but don't freak yourself out. Don't be too worried about it. In the meantime, remember to stay safe and always do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing.